Why on earth is she here? On my way home, I was passing through a deserted park when I heard what sounded like a cat's meow coming from a trash can. Thinking someone might have played a prank and trapped it inside, I gently peered in. To my shock, I found my 3-month-old daughter there. She was supposed to be at home with my husband. In a panic, I called him, and he calmly lied, saying, "The baby's taking a nap." I couldn't believe he would abandon our own child. Furious, I decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. I'm Monica, 30 years old. I was swept off my feet by Ben, the son of my company's president, who pursued me relentlessly. We married after a whirlwind 3-month courtship, and I became a full-time housewife to support him. My husband was so kind when we were dating and newlyweds. His parents welcomed me warmly, and I was living a blissful life. However, as time passed, Ben's true nature, which I hadn't seen while dating, began to surface. About 6 months into our marriage, I joyfully discovered I was pregnant. We had been talking about wanting children soon, so I eagerly shared the news with Ben. "Really? It must be a boy," he exclaimed. "We don't know yet. I'll be happy with either, as long as the baby's healthy," I replied. "No, the baby in your belly is definitely a boy." Ben was thrilled about the pregnancy, but he had always strongly desired a son. For some reason, he became fixated on the idea that our baby was male. From that point on, Ben started telling his parents and coworkers that we were having a son. He chose a boy's name, bought boys' clothes, and kept pushing his assumptions further. I grew worried about his behavior. A few months later, at a checkup, we finally learned the baby's sex. "Honey, it's a girl," I told him. "What? Why a girl?" "I said I wanted a boy," he retorted. "We can't choose the sex, dear." "But she's growing well and will be adorable," I tried to reassure him. "That doesn't matter. You must not have taken proper care of yourself, that's why it's not a boy." I'd never heard that a pregnant woman's lifestyle could determine the baby's sex. But Ben irrationally blamed me for not having his desired son. No matter how hard I tried, there was no way I could have controlled the baby's gender. His claims were nonsensical, but I was too shocked by his harsh words to respond. I began to worry if Ben would love our daughter when she was born. For the first time, I felt anxious about our future together. After learning we were having a girl, Ben's attitude toward me noticeably cooled. "We're supposed to go shopping for baby things today. Remember?" I reminded him one day. "Oh, I'm not in the mood." "Let's skip it," he replied dismissively. But we've had this planned. This wasn't the first time he had canceled our baby-related outings. When he thought we were having a boy, he was so eager to prepare everything. Now that we knew it was a girl, he showed no interest at all. When Ben finally came home that evening, he casually asked, "I'm home." "Man, I'm starving." "What's for dinner?" "It'll be ready soon." "Please be patient," I replied, unable to hide my irritation at his nonchalant attitude after breaking our plans yet again. "What's with that tone?" he snapped. Nothing, I muttered. You're getting lippy. Who do you think pays for everything around here? Angered, Ben shoved me. I never expected him to get physical. With my growing belly affecting my balance, I fell backward, landing hard on my bottom. I was shocked by his actions and worried about the baby. I curled up, clutching my stomach and feeling pain in my lower back. Ouch! I whimpered. I'm sorry. Work's been so stressful lately, I just lost it for a moment. It won't happen again, I promise, Ben apologized profusely. He helped me up, settled me on the sofa, brought me a warm drink, and covered me with a blanket. It had been a while since he'd been so kind. Thank you. I'm okay now, I assured him. Seeing this side of him again, I thought maybe it really was just stress and decided to forgive him. Soon after, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. I named her Emma, and she grew steadily. As I had feared during my pregnancy, Ben showed no interest in our daughter. I found it disappointing but hoped that as Emma grew, his paternal instincts would kick in. One day, as I was busy caring for Emma, my mother called with alarming news. She had been in an accident and needed to be hospitalized. My father had passed away years ago, and Mom lived alone with no relatives nearby. Though her life wasn't in danger, I was worried and decided to visit her immediately. However, Mom lived far away, requiring a full day's travel. I hesitated to bring my 3-month-old daughter on such a long trip. When I told Ben about visiting my mother, he showed no interest in coming along. I was anxious about leaving Emma, but I had no choice but to entrust her to Ben. Remember how I showed you to prepare her formula? I've left notes if you forget anything, I reminded him. It's just one day. You'd better hurry, or you'll miss your bus, he replied dismissively. At first, Ben looked visibly annoyed when I asked him to take care of Emma. But after I repeatedly asked him to be more involved in childcare, he seemed to understand. He started showing initiative in learning about bottles and diapers. I left home that morning with a glimmer of hope that this might be an opportunity for Ben to grow as a father. After a long journey, I reunited with my mother. She looked better than I had feared, which was a relief. After helping with her hospital admission, it was too late to return home, so I stayed the night at her house. I had planned to see Mom again in the morning before leaving, but she called early, insisting I should return home sooner for Emma's sake. I was worried about Emma too, so even though I had told Ben I'd be back in the evening, I decided to take the first train home. Eager to see Emma, I walked briskly towards our house. As I passed through the usually quiet park near our home, I heard what sounded like a baby crying. I looked around but saw no one, not even passers-by. It must be my imagination, I thought. There's no way a baby would be here. It's probably just a kitten. Still, I couldn't shake my unease, so I entered the park to investigate. Following the sound, I realized it was coming from inside a trash can. Did someone play a cruel prank? I wondered, feeling sorry for whatever was trapped inside. I opened the lid, intending to help. But what I found wasn't a cat. Why on earth is she here? I cried out in disbelief. It was my daughter, Emma. Panicking but acting quickly, I lifted Emma out of the trash can. She had been crying intensely, but as I held her, she gradually calmed down and even began to smile at me. I sighed with relief, thankful she seemed unharmed. But how did this happen? She was supposed to be at home with Ben. I hurriedly called my husband. "How's Emma doing?" I asked. "She's napping now, no problems," he lied smoothly. I could hardly believe what I was hearing, but I managed to end the call normally. Ben had no idea I had changed my plans and was already near home. He thought there was no way I could know about Emma, so he lied without hesitation. Hearing those words from my husband, I felt my trust and love for him crumble away. Ben had always strongly desired a son. Since Emma's birth, I had never seen him show any affection towards her. I had hoped paternal feelings would develop over time, but it seemed my wishes had fallen on deaf ears. How could he abandon his own child? It's unforgivable. I decided then and there to get revenge on the husband who had put our precious daughter through such a terrible ordeal. But what should I do now? It felt dangerous to take Emma back to the house with Ben. After some thought, I decided to take a taxi with Emma to a certain place. That night, I returned home at the originally planned time. As I opened the front door, I heard Ben running frantically from the back of the apartment. It's terrible. I dozed off for a bit, and when I woke up, Emma was gone. "She must have been kidnapped," he exclaimed. "Oh no. We should go to the police right away." I played along. "The police? Isn't it too soon for that?" Ben visibly panicked at the mention of police involvement. When I pretended to call the authorities on my phone, he hastily knocked it out of my hand. Ben's face was contorted with fear, his breathing ragged. Seeing his clearly suspicious behavior, I steeled myself and confronted him directly. "Did you take Emma somewhere?" I demanded. "What? You're suspecting me?" he sputtered. "Well, if Emma might have been kidnapped, isn't it odd that you haven't called the police yet?" Cornered by the truth, Ben flew into a rage. "I did it to test your trust in me." "Just as I thought, you don't trust me at all." He began berating me furiously. "What? That makes no sense. What does that have to do with Emma? Tell me, where did you take her?" I glared at him. Ben's angry expression softened into a smirk. "Too bad for you. I threw your precious child in the trash can at the park." "What did you say? Are you out of your mind?" I gasped. "Of course I am. By now, she's probably been taken far away or become food for crows." "That's horrible. Is that how a father acts?" "Shut up. It's your fault for not giving birth to a boy like I told you to." Ben admitted to being the culprit but still tried to shift the blame onto me. Seeing my husband's ugly nature, committing such a terrible act and then trying to blame others, I couldn't contain my anger any longer. "I'm going to the police," I declared. Ha! Go ahead and try. You're the one who'll be in trouble. You're just a housewife. How will you survive without me? That doesn't matter. I can't live with someone who would do this to our precious Emma. I told you, it's your fault for not giving birth to a boy. You disappointed my parents who wanted an heir and made me lose face. I was dumbfounded by Ben's selfish reasoning. Listen, you just need to do as I say. Forget about Emma and hurry up and have a boy next time. Ben sneered at me with a smug expression. I glared back at him, seething with frustration. Just then, the front door opened. To our surprise, Ben's parents stood there, holding Emma. Ben's eyes widened in shock at the sudden appearance of his parents and the daughter he thought he had discarded. He began sweating profusely and backing away. After finding Emma in the park and ending the call with Ben, I had actually taken a taxi to his parents' house. I happened to find Emma and rescue her. I've informed your parents about what happened, I explained. Ben's parents had been listening to his tirade from outside the apartment. What were you thinking, abandoning your own child? Ben's father bellowed. You seemed obsessed with having a male heir, but if you think being a man automatically qualifies you to take over, you're dead wrong. You're fired. Wait, please. Ben pleaded. I'm canceling all plans for you to become the next president. We're cutting ties as parent and child too. Don't ever come back to our house. Ben, who always acted confident and arrogant in front of me and at work, could never stand up to his strict father. Faced with his father's wrath, Ben could only tremble and cry. This apartment is in my name, so get out immediately. I added. Wait, please. Are you abandoning me too? Ben, who had lost his job and been disowned by his parents, now prostrated himself before me, begging for forgiveness despite having berated me earlier. Please, forgive me. I promise I'll take good care of Emma from now on. What are you saying now? You abandoned your own child, just because she wasn't a boy. I was wrong. But now that I don't need to worry about an heir, it'll be fine. Look, I'll take care of the baby mainly, so you can work outside if you want. Don't be ridiculous. I will never forgive you. I never want to see your face again. I looked down at Ben coldly as I spoke. Then, I took out the divorce papers I had prepared in advance and thrust them at him. Denied his last hope, Ben wailed pathetically. He resisted for a while but, under pressure from his parents, eventually signed the papers. With slumped shoulders, he packed his things and left. Our divorce was finalized soon after. I demanded $20,000 in compensation and $100,000 in child support from Ben. His parents apparently paid on his behalf initially, and now Ben lives in a rundown apartment, working day and night at physical labor jobs to repay them. Emma and I moved back to my hometown to be with my mother. She has recovered and been discharged from the hospital, and the three of us are living happily together. I still keep in touch with Ben's parents, who visit regularly, much to Emma's delight. We're all committed to showering Emma with love and ensuring her happiness. My name is Linda Johnson. I woke up to the familiar sound of my alarm clock. The gentle chimes echoed through the cozy bedroom of our home in the suburbs of Springfield, Ohio. The soft morning light filtering through the floral curtains cast a warm glow on the faded wallpaper that had witnessed countless family memories over the years. I'm 55 years old, working part-time as a teacher while managing household chores. As I get out of bed and slip on my well-worn slippers, I think about the busy day ahead while going through my morning routine. On my way to the kitchen, I pause in front of my 14-year-old son Michael's room. I gently open the door to check on him, still sleeping. I'm secretly proud of the wonderful relationship we've built. He's hardly gone through the typical teenage rebellion and never causes trouble at school. While preparing breakfast, I think about my husband, Robert. He's 58 and currently away on a long business trip. Apparently, he's been assigned a big project, which has kept him away from home more often. We have fewer chances to talk on the phone, and I sometimes feel a bit lonely. But I remind myself that it's all for work. As the pleasant aroma of toasting bread fills the kitchen, I glance at the calendar. Noticing that Robert's expected return date is still far off, I let out a small sigh. I'm a little concerned that we're spending less time together as a family of 3. Michael appears in the kitchen with a sleepy face. "Good morning, Mom," he says as he sits at the table. As usual, we have breakfast together, chatting about school events and his friends. I deeply appreciate how precious these ordinary moments are. After breakfast, I see Michael off to school and start preparing for my own work. My part-time teaching job is rewarding, though sometimes challenging. But I'm determined to do my best for my family. Before leaving the house, I look at the family photo in the living room. The 3 of us smiling. But I realize we haven't taken a new picture in a while. Perhaps we've been spending less family time since Robert's work got busier. Feeling this slight unease, I leave the house without dwelling on it further. While driving, I think about today's lessons. Picturing my students' faces makes me a bit nervous. But my love for teaching helps ease that tension. Arriving at school, I exchange greetings with my colleagues. Everyone's kind, and it's a pleasant work environment. Yet, when I think about home, an indescribable anxiety flickers in my chest. Still, I need to focus on the task at hand. Taking a deep breath, I head to the classroom, feeling as if an unknown fate awaits me. After finishing the afternoon classes, I head home. It was another day encouraged by my students' smiles. While driving, I ponder dinner options. Should I make Michael's favorite lasagna, or go for a simple chicken salad? Lost in such ordinary thoughts, I park the car in our garage. I open the front door and call out, "I'm home." Naturally, there's no response. Michael should still be at school. As I put down my bag and start towards the kitchen, I hear footsteps rushing down the stairs. "Michael." I turn around in surprise to see my son standing before me. It's too early for him to be back from school. "Mom." There's an urgency in Michael's voice that I've never heard before. His face is pale, and sweat beads on his forehead. What's wrong? What about school? Michael interrupts my questions with a shout. We need to run away right now. My heart leaps at those words. What? What happened? Michael, out of breath, tries to explain quickly. It's about Dad. Dad. His words trail off. I place my hands on my son's shoulders, trying to calm him. It's okay, take your time. What happened? Michael takes a deep breath, seeming to calm down a bit. But fear still lingers in his eyes. Dad, we're in danger. I don't know the details, but I saw Dad's phone. Alarms go off in my head. Robert's phone. Danger. What's going on? Michael, calm down. What did you see on Dad's phone? My son hesitates, then pulls a smartphone from his pocket. Dad left this at home. And then, there were strange messages. I take the smartphone from Michael and look at the screen. Indeed, there are conversations with people we don't know. As I read the content, my hands start to shake. I'm at a loss for words. The content is unbelievable. Michael continues, Mom, it looks like Dad's involved in something bad. And we might be in danger too. I look into my son's face. His eyes reflect anxiety and fear, but also a strong determination. I understand. I take a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. First, let's calm down and you tell me everything in detail. We move to the living room and sit on the sofa. Michael clasps his hands on his knees and begins to tell me everything. The content of the messages he found on the phone, unsettling rumors he heard at school, and the recent changes in Robert's behavior. As I listen, various emotions swirl within me. Surprise, fear, and sadness. An unknown side of my husband of many years is being revealed. At the same time, I feel a strong need to handle this situation calmly. Michael, thank you for telling me all this. I hold my son's hand and smile encouragingly. You're very brave. Michael seems a little relieved, but tension still hasn't left him. Mom, what should we do? I think deeply. I need to make a calm judgment now. The safety of our family is the top priority. Well, I choose my words carefully. First, it might be dangerous to stay here. But it's not good to move hastily either. I stand up and look out the window. The view of the quiet residential area remains unchanged. However, I can't help but sense the danger lurking within this tranquility. Michael, let's pack our bags. Just the essentials. I make my decision. And I'll contact my friend Sarah. We can trust her. My son nods silently. His eyes reflect anxiety but also trust in me. It's going to be okay. We'll get through this together. I say firmly. However, anxiety swirls in my heart. What will become of us now? And Robert, what on earth are you doing? Michael and I started packing our essentials hurriedly. All the while, I couldn't get the content of my son's story out of my head. "Hey, Michael," I asked carefully, choosing my words. "Can you tell me more about the messages you saw on Dad's phone?" Michael stopped packing and took a deep breath. "Yes," he began hesitantly. "It looked like Dad was making some kind of deal with someone. There was talk about money and documents." My heart raced. "A deal? What kind of deal?" "I'm not sure, but—" Michael furrowed his brow. It seemed like he was trying to sell confidential company information. I gasped at those words. Robert, doing such a thing. It's unbelievable. But thinking back on his recent behavior, something had definitely been off. "Anything else that bothered you?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure. Michael thought for a moment before answering. "Dad's been talking on the phone a lot lately in a hushed voice. He'd hang up in a hurry when I got close. Come to think of it, I had noticed that too. But I had convinced myself it was just work secrets. Now, it all makes sense. The increase in long business trips, less time with family, and the occasional uneasy demeanor he showed. Mom, has Dad turned into a bad person?" Michael's voice trembled. I hugged my son. "No, that's not it. There must be some circumstances we don't know about. But right now, our safety is the most important thing." As we continued packing, I looked around the house. "Is there any clue?" My eyes fell on the bookshelf in the study. "Wait a minute," I went to the bookshelf and pulled out an old album. As I flipped through the pages, photos of our happy times were lined up. But there were no recent photos. Then, a piece of paper slipped out from the back of the album. "This is—" I exclaimed in surprise. It was a bank statement. There were records of huge transactions I knew nothing about. "Michael, come here," I called my son. "Look at this. It seems Dad was hiding something big from us." Michael's eyes widened as he looked at the statement. "Mom, does this mean—" I exhaled deeply. "Yes. The situation seems to be more serious than we thought." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Michael and I looked at each other, frozen. "Who is it?" Michael asked in a low voice. "I don't know," I answered cautiously. "But maybe—" The doorbell rang again. We held our breath. "Mom, what should we do?" Michael's voice was shaking. I made a decision. "We don't have time. Let's leave right now." Through the back door. We hurriedly finished packing the rest of our belongings and headed for the back door. As we did, I took one last look at our family photos. Memories of happier days. But now, we must face a new reality. "Are you ready?" I asked Michael. He nodded bravely. "Yes, let's go." We quietly opened the back door and stepped outside. We don't know where we're heading yet. But we have each other. That's enough. "I'll call Sarah," I said. "She should be able to help us." Michael nodded silently. His eyes reflected anxiety but also strong determination. We quickly got into the car. As I started the engine, I looked back at the house one more time. The memories we built there, and the peaceful days now lost. But we must look forward. It's going to be okay, I told Michael. We'll get through this together. As I drove away, a sense of determination grew in my heart. This is the beginning of a new life. And the start of a journey to uncover the truth. After hanging up the phone with Sarah, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my heart. My friend was surprised but immediately offered to help. Now we have a temporary shelter secured. Michael, we're going to Sarah's place. Let's hurry with the preparations. My son nodded silently and continued packing. Watching him, I once again realized the gravity of our situation. The ordinary life we had just hours ago now seemed like a distant past. Suddenly, we heard the sound of a car. We froze. Mom, could it be? Michael's voice trembled. The car visible through the window was unmistakably Robert's. Hurry, I said in a low voice. Leave the luggage. We need to get out through the back door right now. Being careful not to make any noise, we headed for the back door. Just before opening it, we heard the front door open. Linda. Michael. Robert's voice echoed through the house. Michael and I looked at each other. Seeing the fear in my son's eyes, I steeled my resolve. Let's go. I took Michael's hand and we went out through the back door. We crossed the yard and came out to the back alley. Robert's voice was getting closer. Linda. Where are you? My heart was pounding. But we couldn't stop. We came out to the main street and hailed a taxi. Hurry, I told the driver as we got in. Take us as far as you can. Just as the car started moving, I saw Robert burst out of the alley. Linda. Wait. His voice gradually faded away. Michael looked back, but I kept facing forward. It's okay, I said with a shaky voice. We have our own path now. The taxi drove out of town and continued through unfamiliar scenery. Looking at the landscape flowing past the window, I reflected on my life so far. Our wedding day. The day Michael was born. The happy times we spent as a family. And the shocking truth revealed today. Everything was running through my mind like a fast-moving picture show. Mom, Michael's voice brought me back to reality. What's going to happen to us now? I squeezed my son's hand. I don't know. But if we're together, I'm sure we can overcome anything. The taxi entered the highway. The lights of the town behind us gradually grew smaller. It seemed to symbolize our farewell to our past. It's the beginning of a new life, I whispered. Michael nodded silently. In his eyes, I could see anxiety but also a glimmer of hope. The taxi continued driving through the darkness of the night. We don't know our destination. But what's certain is that we're here together. And we have a strong determination to protect each other. Hey, Michael, I said quietly. We'll understand about Dad someday. But for now, let's think about our future. Yes, Michael's voice had regained some strength. Looking at the scenery flowing past the window, I exhaled deeply. This is the path we've chosen. It might be difficult, but I'm proud that we had the courage to seek the truth and start a new life. The taxi's headlights cut through the darkness, carrying us towards an unknown future. We don't know what awaits us, but surely a path will open up. As long as Michael and I walk together, supporting each other. Well, this is the beginning of our new life, I whispered, softly.
The doctor was performing surgery, and his phone wouldn't stop ringing. Minutes later, the doctor was terrified when the director abruptly entered the operating room. The air in the surgical center of Millbrook Memorial Hospital was thick with tension and anticipation. A torrential rain poured outside as Dr. Thompson, a renowned 50-year-old cardiac surgeon, prepared to begin one of the most important surgeries of his career. His hands, steady and precise, adjusted the surgical mask as his gaze swept across the room, checking every detail of the environment. The team around him moved with silent efficiency, preparing the instruments and monitoring the patient's vital signs. Dr. Thompson took a deep breath, focusing on the task ahead. This is not just another operation. This is Mrs. Davis's chance at a new life. She confided in me that she saved every penny to fulfill a dream, and yet she had to use it for this surgery to have a chance to live. We cannot make any mistakes. I want you to give your best effort, as you always do, he said to the team, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Holding the scalpel with confidence, Dr. Thompson made the first incision. The silence in the room was broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitors. Keep your hands steady and precise, Thompson. Remember why you became a doctor, he murmured to himself, concentrating intensely on each movement. The head nurse watched closely. Dr. Thompson, the vital signs are stable. Blood pressure is as expected, she reported. Without taking his eyes off his work, he replied, "Thank you. Let's keep it that way. Let's give this patient the chance at life she deserves. Every beat of this heart is precious, and we will fight for every single one of them." As the surgery progressed, Dr. Thompson felt the tension increase. Mrs. Davis's heart, now exposed, pulsed under his skilled hands. Look at that. Still strong after all these years. You're a fighter, aren't you, Mrs. Davis, he thought, admiring the resilience of his patient. However, as if it were a bad omen, one of the monitors sounded an alert. The heart was showing signs of stress. No, not now. Come on, Mrs. Davis, stay with me, Dr. Thompson murmured, his hands moving with doubled precision. Nurse, I need more suction here. Someone adjust the perfusion. We have to keep the blood flow stable, he ordered, his calm voice masking the urgency of the moment. You didn't come this far to give up now, Mrs. Davis. Think of your grandchildren. The hugs you still have to give, the stories you still have to tell. We're in this together, he continued, as if he could transmit his determination directly to his patient's heart. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity to Dr. Thompson. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but he barely noticed. Focus, Thompson. Every suture, every movement, everything has to be perfect. The patient trusted you. Don't let her down, he repeated to himself like a mantra. The tense silence of the operating room was abruptly broken by the insistent ringing of a phone. Dr. Thompson, still focused on the delicate task of stabilizing Mrs. Davis's heart, barely registered the sound at first. But Sarah, the head nurse, exchanged a quick glance with him before moving to pick up the phone. Due to the persistence of the calls, her nimble fingers slid across the screen. As Sarah listened to the voice on the other end, her face visibly paled. Her eyes widened, and she shot a look of pure shock at Dr. Thompson. Dr. Thompson, it's about your son, Jason. He's being brought to this hospital's emergency room right now. There was a car accident, Sarah said, her voice trembling. The doctor felt his own heart skip a beat. Jason? My God, no, not now. Not when I'm in the middle of this crucial surgery. Please, tell me it's not serious, he thought, struggling to maintain his composure. Sarah continued, her voice low and urgent. Jason suffered severe chest trauma. Preliminary tests done by the paramedics indicate that he needs emergency heart surgery. You're the only cardiac surgeon in the hospital right now, she said, her words hitting Dr. Thompson like a punch to the gut. His hands, until then steady and precise, visibly trembled over Mrs. Davis's open chest. A whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed him. Fear, despair, guilt. No, this can't be happening. My son needs me, but Mrs. Davis, she trusted me with her life. How can I make this choice? He thought, his world collapsing around him. The team in the room watched in tense silence, aware of the impossible dilemma their leader was facing. Dr. Thompson closed his eyes for a brief moment, taking a deep breath to calm his turbulent mind. Sarah, who else is available? Who can attend to Jason while I finish here? He asked, his voice shaky but determined. Sarah hesitated for a moment before responding. The medical director is available. He has experience as a general practitioner, but his main specialty is not cardiology, and that choice could be fatal for your son. Dr. Thompson felt the weight of the decision on his shoulders. Every second that passed was crucial for both Mrs. Davis and Jason. My son needs me, and I am here with my hands literally inside someone else's chest, he thought, his internal conflict tearing him apart. With supreme effort, he forced himself to make a decision. Sarah, ask the director to prepare Jason for surgery immediately. Tell him to start the procedure. I will finish here as quickly as possible, and then I will go help him, he instructed, his voice breaking slightly on the last phrase. The tension in the room was palpable as Sarah left to relay the instructions. The doctor turned his attention back to Mrs. Davis, his movements now filled with an added urgency. Mrs. Davis, I promise to give you my best, and I will keep that promise, but now I need you to fight with me. We need to finish this quickly because another life is at stake. My son's life, he murmured, as if the unconscious patient could hear and understand him. Every suture, every movement was executed with an almost supernatural precision, as if Dr. Thompson was channeling all his anguish and fear into absolute concentration. Time seemed to both drag on and fly by simultaneously, each minute precious for both lives in his hands. Sarah returned to the room, her face a mask of professional concern. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Anderson is preparing Jason for surgery now. He said he will do everything possible to stabilize him until you can get there, she reported, her voice soft but urgent. The doctor nodded silently, grateful for the efficiency of his team and for his colleagues' willingness to face such a monumental challenge. Thank you, Sarah. Please keep me informed about Jason's condition. Now let's finish this here. Mrs. Davis deserves our full attention at this moment, and that's what she will have, he said, his voice laden with determination. Internally, he fought a fierce battle against fear and guilt. Jason, son, be strong. Daddy is doing everything he can to get to you. Fight, my boy. Fight with all your strength, he thought, wishing he could send those words directly to his son's heart. With renewed determination, the doctor continued the patient's surgery, each movement a silent prayer for two precious lives in danger, knowing that the true test of his skill and courage was yet to come. The doctor kept trying to stabilize the patient's heart, but the patient was in an unstable condition. The tension in the operating room reached its peak when the door abruptly opened, revealing the imposing figure of Dr. Anderson, the hospital's director. His normally composed face was marked by lines of worry as he crossed the room, completely ignoring protocols. Dr. Thompson, still bent over Mrs. Davis's open chest, looked up, feeling a wave of dread at seeing his superior's expression. Anderson approached the operating table, his eyes fixed on Thompson. Thompson, I'm sorry, but the situation is critical. Jason? The tests showed severe heart damage. He needs surgery immediately, or... Anderson left the sentence unfinished, the weight of the unspoken words hanging in the air. Dr. Thompson felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Immediately. Can't you stabilize him a bit longer? What's his condition? There must be other cardiac surgeons available, he stammered, his mind struggling to process the information. Anderson shook his head, the gravity of the situation evident in every word. Fearsu, the impact of the accident caused a rupture in the heart wall. As for the other surgeons, you're the only one with the expertise needed for this specific procedure. Thompson, I know it's asking the impossible, but Thompson felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. His mind raced, desperately searching for a solution. Anderson, if I abandon this surgery halfway, the patient won't survive. How can you ask me to make this choice? It's my son. This woman also trusted me, spent all her life savings to fight for this chance to live, and now Jason. My God, what do I do? He thought, the internal conflict threatening to consume him. Anderson, sensing Thompson's struggle, placed a hand on his shoulder. Thompson, I know it's an impossible decision, but we need to act quickly. You have to make a choice, and you know what you have to do. You took an oath. You can't leave the surgery, but I'll let you decide for yourself, he said, his voice a mix of compassion and urgency. Dr. Thompson closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to calm his turbulent mind. But before he could respond, the sharp sound of one of the monitors began beeping frantically. Mrs. Davis's heart had gone into fibrillation. No, not now, Thompson exclaimed, his hands moving instantly to intervene. Defibrillator now, he shouted, the urgency in his voice electrifying the team into action. As the defibrillator pads were being prepared, Thompson performed manual chest compressions, his eyes fixed on the monitors. Come on, Mrs. Davis, don't give up now. You've come so far, fight with me, he murmured, each compression a silent plea. The seconds dragged on like hours as Thompson fought to stabilize Mrs. Davis. His mind was torn between the patient in front of him and his son, whose life hung by a thread just a few rooms away. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with unshed tears of frustration and fear. Charged! Stand clear, he ordered, applying the shock. Mrs. Davis's body arched on the table, but the monitor continued to show an erratic rhythm. Again, Thompson commanded with tense urgency. After the second shock, a faint but steady beep finally filled the room. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the team, but the tension still hung in the air like a dense cloud. Dr. Thompson, with sweat streaming down his face, kept his eyes locked on the monitors, fearing that any distraction could lead to another crisis. Dr. Thompson barely had time to breathe a sigh of relief when he realized that Mrs. Davis's situation was far from stabilized. The heart in his hands, still exposed and vulnerable, began to show irregular and alarming contractions. Damn it, we're losing her again, he exclaimed, his skilled fingers moving quickly to massage the organ directly. We need more epinephrine now. As the team moved frantically around him, Thompson felt the weight of 2 lives in his hands, literally. Mrs. Davis's heart beat weakly against his fingers, each beat a struggle for survival. Come on, ma'am. Don't give up now, he murmured, his voice a mix of plea and command. His eyes quickly darted between the heart monitor and the pale face of his patient. At that critical moment, Dr. Anderson approached the operating table, his eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. Thompson, I still need your decision. Jason is getting worse. If you don't go to him now, he didn't need to finish the sentence, his voice low and urgent. With Mrs. Davis's heart still beating irregularly in his hand, Thompson looked at Anderson, the conflict evident in his eyes. Anderson, I can't just leave her heart. If I let go now, she'll die instantly. His voice trembled slightly as he continued. But Jason, my son, he needs me too. Anderson nodded gravely, understanding the impossible dilemma. There's only one way, Thompson. I'm going to have to take over from here. You need to pass her heart to me, literally, and go take care of Jason. Thompson's eyes widened at the suggestion. The maneuver Anderson was proposing was incredibly risky. One wrong move, a fraction of a second out of sync, and Mrs. Davis wouldn't stand a chance. Anderson, are you sure? It's almost impossible, Thompson said, his voice barely more than a whisper. Anderson positioned himself beside him, his hands already gloved and ready. We have no choice, Thompson. There's the only chance to save both of them. With a tense nod, Thompson began to prepare for the most crucial transfer of his career. Listen carefully, Anderson, he instructed, his voice now firm and focused. Now when I say now, you're going to slide your hands exactly where mine are. There can't be even a millimeter of error. Understood. Anderson nodded, concentration etched in every line of his face. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as the two doctors positioned themselves. Thompson could feel each weak beat of Mrs. Davis's heart against his fingers, a constant reminder of what was at stake. "Ready?" Thompson asked, his eyes locked on Anderson's. With one last nod of confirmation, he began the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Now! In a fluid and precise motion, Thompson's hands slid out as Anderson's took their place. For one terrifying moment, the heart monitor emitted an alarming sound, but it soon returned to a weak yet steady rhythm. Anderson, still with his hands inside Mrs. Davis's open chest, looked at Thompson with fierce determination in his eyes. "So Anderson, we need to do something unprecedented. Nurses, bring Jason here to this room." "Annette," Dr. Thompson said, resolute. "Here." "Thompson, that's against all protocols," Anderson exclaimed, his eyes wide with surprise. "Say to hell with protocol. Say it's the only way to save them both," Thompson retorted, his voice firm and decisive. As Anderson hurried out to arrange Jason's transfer, Thompson turned his attention to the team. "So prepare the other side of the room. We need 2 complete sets of surgical equipment. Move quickly," he ordered emphatically. The room erupted into a controlled frenzy of activity. Minutes later, which felt like hours, the doors opened again. Jason was rushed in, already anesthetized and prepped for surgery. "All right, Anderson, now you're going to have to be my hands for Mrs. Davis," Thompson said, his eyes quickly alternating between the two patients. "Are you sure?" "But I'm not a cardiac surgeon," Anderson protested, fear evident in his voice. Thompson began working on Jason's heart, his hands moving with millimetric precision. At the same time, he dictated instructions to Anderson. "I know, Anderson, listen carefully. You're going to feel her heart like it's a soft fruit. Any excessive pressure could cause a fatal rupture," he explained, his eyes fixed on the director's hands. Anderson swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly as he positioned himself. "What if I make a mistake? I can't, Thompson. I don't think this was a good idea. If this woman doesn't survive," the director argued, his voice shaking with fear. "I don't think about that. Trust me and your ability to follow instructions. You're an excellent doctor. You just don't have this specialization, but I know you're capable. I've seen you do harder things than this," Thompson responded without taking his eyes off Jason's heart. Thompson guided Anderson through each movement, his voice calm but intense. "Now, move your index finger 1 millimeter to the left. Do you feel that small bump? It's crucial that you don't press on it. The slightest touch could trigger a fatal arrhythmia," he instructed gently. "My God, Thompson, how do you do this?" Anderson murmured, sweat dripping down his forehead. "Years of practice and a lot of coffee. You'll get through this too. Maybe one day, we'll look back on this and smile." "What do you think?" "The day we did something crazy and saved 2 patients, one of them being my own son, Latois," Thompson replied, a slight tense smile on his lips. Suddenly, Jason's monitor emitted a sharp alarm. Thompson felt his heart turn cold. "Damn it, we're losing him!" "Anderson, hold your position. Don't move a millimeter." Without hesitation, Thompson began chest compressions on Jason, his movements precise and controlled. "Come on, son, fight," he murmured, each compression a silent plea. "Thompson, what should I do?" Anderson asked, his voice trembling with tension. "Stay exactly where you are. If you move now, we'll lose Mrs. Davis too," Thompson replied, his voice surprisingly calm. The seconds dragged on as Thompson fought for his son's life. His hands moved with superhuman speed and precision, alternating between chest compressions and microsurgical adjustments. "The heartbeat is coming back. He's pulling through." "Keep going, doctor," a nurse exclaimed, the relief evident in her voice. "Great, Anderson. Now comes the delicate part. We need to close Mrs. Davis's incision," Thompson said, his focus divided between the 2 patients. Thompson guided Anderson through the suturing process, describing each movement with almost painful precision. "Each stitch needs to be exactly 3 millimeters apart from the previous one. 1 millimeter more or less could cause serious post-operative complications," he said, his emotions raw, still shaken by the near loss of his son. As they worked, the storm outside the hospital reached its peak, with deafening thunder shaking the windows of the operating room. The lights flickered ominously, causing everyone in the room to hold their breath for a moment. Thompson, with his hands still inside Jason's open chest, cast a worried glance at the monitors displaying both patients' vital signs. The constant sound of torrential rain pounding against the roof created an even more tense atmosphere. "This is not good," Thompson murmured, his gaze shifting between Jason and Mrs. Davis. "Anderson, how's the progress with the mitral valve?" Anderson, his hands trembling, responded, I don't know if I can do it, added Thompson. "My hands won't stop shaking." At that moment, the lights flickered again, this time for a longer period. The hum of the emergency generators echoed through the corridors, signaling that the hospital was now relying on generator power. Thompson felt a bead of sweat run down his forehead, acutely aware that time was quickly running out. He knew they had only a few hours before the generator completely failed. "Damn it, Anderson, we need to speed up." "We don't have much time." "How long will the generators last?" Anderson looked at the wall clock, his face pale in the dim emergency lighting. "The main generators have fuel for at most 4 hours, Thompson. The backup ones might give us another 2, maybe 3 if we're lucky." Thompson cursed under his breath, his hands still working meticulously on Jason's heart. 6 hours at best. "This double surgery could take at least 8. "Anderson, we need a miracle here," he replied. At that moment, the operating room door burst open. A head nurse, clearly agitated, rushed into the room. Dr. Anderson, we have an emergency. The intensive care unit is panicking. If we don't start evacuating now, we could lose dozens of patients when the power runs out," she informed, her face filled with tension. Anderson looked at Thompson, the conflict evident in his eyes. "There's Thompson. How can we perform this operation if I need to be somewhere else right now? If I leave now, if I go, she'll die, but if I stay, the other patients might die. Dozens of patients depend on machines in this hospital," Anderson said, his voice filled with panic. "And then we'll have to be faster than we've ever been," Thompson replied, his voice tense but determined. He cast a quick glance at the clock on the wall. "I can't be in 2 places at once. I have responsibilities to all the patients in this hospital. This is the moment they need a good director. Nurse, tell me the situation in the intensive care unit," the director ordered, his tone firm. The head nurse interrupted, her voice urgent. "We have 47 patients on life support. Without an evacuation plan, they have less than 20 minutes when the generators fail." Thompson closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the decision almost unbearable. When he opened them again, there was a fierce determination in his gaze. "Anderson, you can stay. We have to try to finish these surgeries faster. Let's do this together, and let's do it quickly so you can get back to your duties," the doctor argued. His eyes locked on the director. "Nurse, I need you to coordinate the evacuation. Follow the emergency protocol and keep us informed," Anderson said, determined to save everyone. The nurse quickly nodded and left the room, leaving the 2 doctors with their seemingly impossible task. "Okay, Anderson, listen carefully. We'll do this step by step. Every move counts. Every second is precious. Forget that you're an administrator now. Today, you're a cardiac surgeon, and you have little time to save your patient's life," Thompson said, his voice firm. Anderson took a deep breath, trying to steady his trembling hands. "All right, I'm listening, Thompson, guide me. Tell me exactly what I need to do to save this woman." Thompson began giving quick, precise instructions, his eyes constantly moving between Jason and Mrs. Davis. "Now, move the forceps 2 millimeters to the left. Be careful with the coronary artery. It's right there." "Like this?" Anderson asked, his voice trembling slightly as he followed the instructions. "Exactly. Now get ready for the suture. Remember, every stitch needs to be perfect." "We don't have time to redo it," Thompson replied, his own hands moving with impressive speed and precision over Jason's heart. The following hours were a frantic race against time. Thompson alternated between operating on Jason and giving detailed instructions to Anderson, every word calculated, every movement precise. Sweat dripped down both of their faces, the tension in the air palpable. "How much time do we have left?" Thompson asked, without taking his eyes off his work. Anderson looked at the clock, his face a mask of concentration and worry. 3.5 hours have passed. We're halfway through the time we have with the generators. Damn it. We need to speed up. Anderson, get ready for the next step. It's going to be the most delicate one yet, Thompson murmured. As Thompson guided Anderson through a particularly complex maneuver, the sound of the storm outside seemed to intensify, as if challenging their determination. The lights flickered again, causing both doctors to hold their breath. This can't be happening. This storm needs to end, Anderson whispered, his hands freezing in place. Stay focused, Anderson. Ignore everything around you. It's just you, me, and these two hearts that need us, Thompson instructed firmly. The hours continued to pass, each minute a battle against time and the limits of their own skills and endurance. Thompson worked tirelessly, his hands moving with an almost supernatural precision between the two patients. Thompson, do you think we'll make it? Anderson asked, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. Thompson paused, looking at the monitors displaying the vital signs of both patients. Despite the evident fatigue on his face, there was a glimmer of determination in his eyes. We have to make it, Anderson. It's not just about Jason and Mrs. Davis anymore. It's about all the patients in this hospital. Every stitch, every movement brings us closer to saving not just 2 tuners, but dozens of lives. So yes, we'll make it. Because we have no other choice, he replied, his voice filled with emotion and resolve. With those words, both doctors returned to their work with renewed determination, their hands dancing over open hearts, fighting against the relentless clock and the raging storm outside. Suddenly, a deafening roar of thunder was the only warning before darkness enveloped the operating room. For a terrifying moment, Thompson's world was reduced to shadows and the sound of his own labored breathing. His fingers, which moments before had been moving with millimetric precision, were now frozen in the air, still holding the scalpel. My God, I can't see anything. Did I cut something when the lights went out? He thought, panic rising. The oppressive silence was shattered by the sharp sound of the heart monitors, signaling that something was terribly wrong. Lights! We need the emergency lights now, Thompson shouted, his voice filled with panic. My God, Thompson, what happened? Anderson's trembling voice came from the darkness. When the emergency lights finally flickered on, bathing the room in an eerie red glow, Thompson felt his heart sink. An alarming amount of blood was quickly pooling around Jason's exposed heart, revealing the catastrophic mistake caused by the cut made in the dark. Hanusti Notanoshi, my son. My son, Thompson murmured, his hands now moving frantically to contain the damage. Suction. I need to see where all this blood is coming from. A nurse quickly sprang into action, her voice tense. Doctor, his blood pressure is dropping fast. He's losing a lot of blood, she said. Thompson barely heard her, his entire focus on the hemorrhage that threatened to take his son's life. His fingers danced over Jason's heart, desperately trying to locate and stop the source of the bleeding. Each second seemed to drag on for an eternity, the irregular beep of the heart monitor, a constant reminder of how close they were to losing everything. Come on, Jason, hold on. Please, my son, I can't bear to lose you by my own hands, Thompson whispered, his hands never stopping. John, I'm not going to lose you, not like this. Anderson, he's still working on Mrs. Davis anxiously asked. Thompson, what can I do? Keep Mrs. Davis stable, Thompson responded without looking up. And someone get a blood transfusion ready for my son immediately. He's losing too much blood. His blood type is O negative, he said, knowing he had only minutes before the blood loss became fatal. With quick and precise movements, he began suturing the damaged vessels, his hands moving at a speed that defied comprehension. More light here, he ordered, and immediately a nurse directed a flashlight to the surgical field. And I need to see every vessel, every drop of blood. Doctor, his hemoglobin levels are critical, the nurse informed, her voice trembling slightly. Thompson felt a drop of sweat run down his forehead, but he didn't dare take his hands off the task to wipe it away. Each stitch was a battle against time, each knot an act of defiance against the death that threatened to take his son. Not today, I won't let you go, Jason. Not while I can do something, Thompson murmured through clenched teeth. Suddenly, another nurse rushed into the room, her face pale with worry. Dr. Thompson, we have a problem, she said, her voice urgent. Jason is O negative, and we don't have any units of that blood type available in the hospital. The storm caused several accidents, and all the blood stock was used up, she explained. casting a sorrowful glance toward the doctor. Thompson felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. He looked at his hands, still working frantically to stop the bleeding, and then at the monitor showing Jason's weakening vital signs. "Dennis, this can't be happening," he murmured, his mind racing to find a solution. "We need that blood. He won't survive without it." The nurse beside him spoke, her voice trembling. "Doctor, what do we do?" Thompson looked at his son's pale face, the blood continuing to flow despite his best efforts. The realization of what was happening, of what he could lose, hit him like a punch to the gut. He was losing his son, and for the first time in his career, he didn't know what to do. "Jason, please, hold on. I will find a way." "I have to find a way," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. But as the words left his lips, Thompson knew he was facing an almost impossible battle. Time was running out. The blood continued to flow, and his son's life was slipping through his fingers. Literally. Time seemed to freeze as Thompson stared at the monitor, showing Jason's increasingly weak vital signs. His mind raced, desperately searching for a solution to the lack of O-negative blood. Suddenly his eyes widened with a sudden realization. "I am O-negative. Prepare a direct transfusion. We'll use my blood," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the frantic beeping of the monitors. Without hesitation, he turned to the team, his voice gaining strength. The head nurse stared at him, shocked. "Dr. Thompson, that's extremely risky. You can't operate and donate blood at the same time." "We have no choice. It's Jason's only chance. I get regular checkups. I know I'm a match." "Anderson, you're almost finished, but you'll have to take over Mrs. Davis's surgery completely." "Can you do that?" Thompson responded, already removing his surgical gown. Anderson, still with his hands inside Mrs. Davis's open chest, nodded nervously. "I'll do my best, Thompson, but what about Jason? How will you donate your blood and operate at the same time?" he asked. Thompson was already rolling up his sleeve, exposing his arm for the transfusion needle. "I will. I'll operate with one hand and donate with the other if I have to." He looked at the team, his eyes burning with fierce determination. "We don't have time to waste. Every second counts. Let's save my son. Nurse, have more blood stock brought from the nearest blood bank, and have them hurry," he said, filled with determination. The nurse nodded before running back into the hospital corridors. With an efficiency born of desperation, the team quickly prepared the direct transfusion. Thompson felt the prick of the needle in his arm, watching his blood flow through the tube toward Jason's pale body. Without missing a beat, he turned his attention back to his son's exposed heart, his hands moving with an almost supernatural precision. "Come on, Jason, fight with me. Use my blood, use my strength. I won't let you go," he murmured, his fingers dancing over the damaged tissue. A nurse anxiously watched the monitors. "Dr. Thompson, Jason's vital signs are starting to stabilize, but yours are dropping rapidly," she said. Thompson ignored the warning, his concentration fully focused on the delicate task of repairing the damage his mistake had caused. He could feel the strength leaving his body as his blood flowed to Jason, but he refused to stop. Each stitch was a battle against his own growing weakness, each movement a fight against the dizziness that threatened to overwhelm him. "No matter what happens to me, keep the transfusion going until Jason is out of danger," Thompson ordered through gritted teeth, his hands never stopping. Anderson, working furiously to finish Mrs. Davis's surgery, cast a worried glance at Thompson. "Thompson, you need to take care of yourself too. We can't lose both of you," he said. The minutes dragged on, each second seeming like an eternity of intense concentration and iron determination. Thompson could feel his vision starting to blur, his body trembling with the effort of staying on his feet. But he refused to give in. His mind focused solely on the task of saving his son. "Go more suction here. I need to see what I'm doing," he ordered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. A nurse approached, concern evident in her voice. "Doctor, you're very pale. Maybe we should stop the transfusion for a moment," she suggested, worried. "Don't stop until I say so. Jason needs every drop. The priority is to save him, do you understand? I want my son to leave this room alive," Thompson exclaimed louder than he intended. He blinked rapidly, trying to clear his vision. The world around him seemed to be spinning, but he forced himself to focus on Jason's heart, which now beat more strongly under his hands. Meanwhile, Anderson was finishing the last stitches on Mrs. Davis's surgery. Thanks to Dr. Thompson's instructions. I'm almost done here. How's Jason? The director asked, his voice tense but relieved. Thompson could barely respond, his tongue feeling heavy in his mouth. He's improving, but I'm not done yet. Anderson quickly closed Mrs. Davis's incision and moved to help Thompson. Let me take over, Thompson. You've done enough, he said. But Thompson shook his head stubbornly, his movements now slow and imprecise. No, I need to finish. This surgery is more complicated because of the incision. I have to fix what I did. I need to be sure. His voice was little more than a whisper, his eyes struggling to stay focused on the work in front of him. Dr. Thompson, you need to stop the transfusion immediately. Jason's vital signs are normal now, but you need to stop or... The nurse warned, her voice urgent. Thompson interrupted her with a weak gesture. It doesn't matter, just a few more. Just a few more stitches, he argued. With a Herculean effort, Thompson forced his trembling hands to make the final sutures. Each movement was agony, each second a battle against the unconsciousness that threatened to engulf him, and the pain that began to pierce his chest due to the lack of blood. But he refused to stop, refused to fail when he was so close. It's done. Jason is saved, Thompson finally murmured, his words barely audible. He withdrew his hands from his son, struggling to stay on his feet. Anderson quickly moved to catch Thompson, who was dangerously close to collapsing. "On, Thompson, you did it. Now let us take care of you." But Thompson barely heard him. With Jason's heart beating strong and steady, he finally allowed the pain to take over. His legs gave out, and he fell unconscious into Anderson's arms. The next day, Jason slowly blinked, his eyes adjusting to the soft light in the hospital room. He felt disoriented, confused memories of the accident and surgery mixing in his mind. When his vision cleared, he saw Dr. Anderson standing beside his bed, a look of concern and relief on his tired face. "Welcome back, Jason. How are you feeling?" Anderson said softly. Jason tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Anderson offered him a glass of water, which he drank eagerly. "How did I end up here?" "I only remember the storm. I was driving. The tires slipped on the wet road. I don't remember anything after that. What happened?" Jason finally managed to ask. Anderson took a deep breath, his eyes filling with emotion. "Hey, Jason, you were in an accident. The city was in chaos after the storm. Your father was the only one who could operate on you, and he did something incredible for you." And then, with a voice choked with emotion, he told Jason about Thompson's sacrifice, how he had donated his own blood during the surgery, risking his life to save his son. Jason felt tears begin to fall as Anderson explained that his father was in a coma, having lost too much blood during the procedure. He's in the room next door. He's still unconscious, but do you want to see him?" Anderson asked, his voice trembling. Jason nodded, still trying to comprehend the immense sacrifice his father had made for him. Minutes later, supported by Anderson, Jason stumbled into the room next door. The sight of Thompson, pale and still in the hospital bed connected to various tubes and monitors, made Jason's heart ache. He moved slowly to the bed, his legs trembling not only from physical weakness, but from overwhelming emotion. "Dad," Jason began, his voice barely a whisper. And then, as if a dam had broken, the words flowed out, filled with love, gratitude, and pleading. "Dad, it's me. Jason. I don't even know where to start. Dr. Anderson told me what you did for me, how you literally gave your blood to save me. Dad, I can never thank you enough. But now I need you to live, be strong and live, Dad. Remember that time when I was 6 years old, and you took me fishing for the first time? I was so excited, but when we got to the lake, I tripped and fell into the water. I was so scared, but you jumped in after me without hesitation. You held me tight and told me you'd never let me sink. Well, now it's my turn not to let you sink, Dad. And that time at my first baseball game. I was so nervous, but you were there cheering me on from the stands. You always said it didn't matter if I hit the ball or not. What mattered was that I tried with all my heart. Well, Dad, now I need you to try with all your heart. Try to come back to me. I remember all the nights you came home late from the hospital, exhausted from saving lives, but still found the energy to help me with my homework. You always said that knowledge was the greatest gift you could give me. But you were wrong, Dad. The greatest gift you gave me was your unconditional love. Dad, there's so much I still need to learn from you. So many things I want to tell you. So many moments I want to share. Remember how you always said you wanted to see me graduate from college, that you wanted to dance at my wedding, that you wanted to hold your grandkids in your arms. Dad, and all of that is still to come. And I need you to be there for every one of those moments. You've always been my hero, Dad. Not just because of the brilliant doctor you are, but because of the incredible man you are. Your compassion, your strength, your determination, you've taught me so much just by your example. And now, once again, you've shown how far your love for me goes. Dad, please open your eyes, please squeeze my hand. Give me a sign, any sign that you can hear me. We still have so many laughs to share, so many arguments to have, so many hugs to exchange. I love you, Dad, more than words can ever express. You're my rock, my safe harbor, my best friend. I'm not ready to say goodbye. I don't think I ever will be. So please come back to me, come back to us. There's so much still for us to live through together. So many memories to make, so many moments to share. Dad, you've given me life twice now. First when I was born, and now by saving me on that operating table. Let me return the favor. Let me be your strength now. Let me be the reason you fight to come back. Because I need you, Dad. I always have and I always will. You're a part of me, the best part. So please, please, come back to me. Jason's last words were barely audible, his voice choked by the tears now streaming freely down his face. He held his father's hand, silently praying for a miracle, for a sign, for anything that would indicate that his words had been heard. The days dragged on like an eternity for Jason, who rarely left his father's bedside. The hospital room had become his world, the constant beeping of the heart monitors his soundtrack. He watched every small movement, every fluctuation in the vital signs, desperately hoping for a sign that his father was coming back to him. The nurses came and went, changing IV bags and checking the vital signs, casting sympathetic glances at the young man who refused to give up hope. Dad, I'm here. I'm waiting for you. Please come back to me, Jason whispered every night, holding Thompson's cold hand. In response, only silence and the steady beeping of the heart monitor filled the air. On the morning of the 5th day, as the rising sunlight filtered through the blinds, Jason noticed a subtle change. His father's fingers, once still in his hand, seemed to move slightly. He leaned forward, heart racing, barely daring to breathe. Slowly, painfully slow, Thompson's fingers began to tremble. Dad? Dad, can you hear me? Jason called, his voice trembling with emotion. Thompson groaned softly, his eyes struggling to open against the light. Jason pressed the nurse call button frantically, not taking his eyes off his father's face. Thompson's eyes slowly opened, his unfocused gaze blinking in confusion before finally settling on his son's face. For a moment, father and son stared at each other in silence, tears beginning to form in both of their eyes. Jason, you're okay, Thompson managed to whisper, his voice hoarse from disuse. Jason let out a choked laugh, the tears now flowing freely down his face. Yes, Dad, thanks to you, I'm okay. We're both okay, he replied, a smile breaking through his tears. Before Thompson could respond, the door to the room opened and Dr. Anderson hurried in, accompanied by a team of nurses. His eyes widened at the sight of Thompson conscious, a relieved smile spreading across his tired face. Thompson, welcome back, my friend. You gave us quite a scare, Anderson exclaimed, quickly moving to the bedside. Thompson tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. A nurse quickly offered him a cup of water with a straw. After taking a few careful sips, Thompson finally managed to speak more clearly. Anderson, Juan, Mrs. Davis, the other patients. What happened? He asked, looking at the director. Anderson, placing a comforting hand on Thompson's shoulder, smiled. Everyone is fine, Thompson. Thanks to you, they all made it. Mrs. Davis is recovering quickly and should be discharged soon. As for the other patients in the hospital, they're all fine. As soon as you passed out, the power came back on and we didn't need to evacuate. In fact, your quick action in requesting more blood supplies saved your own life. If you hadn't done that, We wouldn't have had the blood to replace what you donated so selflessly to your son, Anderson explained, his voice filled with pride and admiration. Thompson frowned, confused. I asked for more blood. Anderson nodded, his smile widening. Yes, don't you remember? During the surgery, you asked the nurse to request more blood supplies from the nearest bank. It was that blood that ended up saving your life after you passed out. Tears began to well up in Thompson's eyes as the reality of what had happened finally hit him. He looked at Jason, who was still holding his hand tightly, and then back at Anderson. I really did all that, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Jason squeezed his father's hand. Yes, Dad. You're a hero, to me, to Mrs. Davis, to everyone in the hospital. Anderson spoke particularly solemnly. Thompson, what you did, it was beyond heroic. You risked your own life to save your son and your patients, he praised. Thompson closed his eyes for a moment, letting Anderson's words and the love in his voice envelop him. When he opened them again, they were filled with a mixture of gratitude and determination. I just did what any father, any doctor would do, but I'm grateful, so grateful to be here, to see my son, to know that everyone is okay, he said softly. Jason leaned in and hugged his father carefully, mindful of the tubes and wires. Thank you, Dad, for everything. I love you so much. I don't know what I would do without you, he whispered. In that moment, as father and son embraced, with Anderson watching with an emotional smile, the hospital room seemed to radiate with the warmth of love, gratitude, and renewed hope. The storm had passed, both literally and figuratively, and although the road to full recovery was still long, they knew they would face it together, stronger for all they had overcome. So when can I get back to work? Thompson asked with a familiar glint of humor in his eyes. This prompted a surprised laugh from Jason and Anderson. One thing at a time, Thompson. For now, focus on getting better. The hospital can wait, Anderson replied, shaking his head with admiration. And so, surrounded by the love of his son and the respect of his colleagues, Thompson began his journey of recovery. The road ahead would be long, but he knew that with Jason by his side and the memory of what they had accomplished together, he could face any challenge that came his way. The future, once uncertain, now shone with promise and possibility. 6 months later, Dr. Thompson walked through the hospital corridors, now as the new chief of cardiothoracic surgery, a promotion he received after waking up in the hospital. He stopped at the nurse's station to check some charts when he heard a familiar voice. Hey, Dad, I came to see you before my anatomy class. Jason approached, carrying a backpack. Thompson, hugging his son, smiled, surprised by the visit. It's good to see you, my son. How's your studying going? Intense, but I'm loving every minute of it. That experience, well, it made me sure that I want to follow in your footsteps. I've decided that I'm going to specialize in cardiology, just like you, Jason replied, his eyes shining with excitement. Thompson could barely contain his pride as he looked at his son. I'm sure you'll be an excellent doctor, my son, no matter what specialty you choose, he responded with a proud smile. As they talked, Mrs. Davis appeared in the hallway, accompanied by a nurse. When she saw Thompson, her face lit up. Dr. Thompson, it's so good to see you. I came for my routine checkup, she said, approaching him. Thompson greeted her warmly. Mrs. Davis, it's a pleasure to see you. How are you feeling? Wonderfully well, thanks to you. You know, last month, I got to see my first grandchild being born. I wouldn't have had that moment if it weren't for you, she replied, her eyes filling with tears of gratitude. Thompson felt a lump in his throat. I'm so happy for you, Mrs. Davis. It's moments like this that make what I do worthwhile, he said, delighted to see her so healthy and strong. At that moment, Dr. Anderson joined the group. Thompson, your cardiology team is waiting for you for a meeting. You asked me to attend. Oh, hello, Jason, Mrs. Davis. After the greetings, Thompson turned back to Jason and Mrs. Davis. Yes, I'll go right away. Sorry, I have to go. Jason, see you at home for dinner. Mrs. Davis, good luck with your checkup, he said as he took his leave. As he walked away with Anderson, Thompson reflected on how much his life had changed. His new role brought more responsibilities, but also more opportunities to make a difference. You know, Anderson, sometimes I still can't believe everything that's happened, he confessed quietly. Anderson smiled, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "You deserve it, Thompson. Your dedication to all your patients." Thompson nodded, grateful. As he entered the meeting room, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the same courage and compassion that had brought him this far. With his son following in his footsteps, grateful patients like Mrs. Davis and the support of colleagues like Anderson, the future seemed bright and full of happy possibilities. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing you emotional stories almost every day. Don't miss the next surprising narrative that's about to appear on your screen. We are so grateful to have you here with us. Now you can click on the links appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, filled with valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.
"You're a disgrace to this family, Amity." Clem's words cut through the somber atmosphere like a knife, her face contorted with anger. I stood there, stunned, as the rest of our family shifted uncomfortably around us. The funeral reception had barely begun, and already my sister was picking a fight. "How dare you cry like that at Dad's funeral? You're embarrassing us all," she hissed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm. I yanked away from her grip, my own anger rising. He was our father, Clem. We're supposed to mourn him. "Please, girls," our mother, Lydia, intervened, her voice trembling. "Not here. Not now." But Clem wasn't finished. "Always the perfect daughter, aren't you? Well, guess what? Dad's gone, and your little act doesn't matter anymore. My name is Amity, and this is how my world began to unravel on the day we buried my father." I clutched the letter in my pocket, the last words Dad had written to me before his sudden death. It was meant to be a guide, a promise for the future family I was about to start. Now, it felt like a bitter reminder of everything I'd lost. "You don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad loved us both." Clem scoffed. "Oh, please. We both know who the favorite was." My husband, Marlon, stepped between us. "That's enough, Clem. This isn't the time or place." She turned her venom on him. "Stay out of this, Marlon. You're not even real family." I saw the hurt flash across his face, and something inside me snapped. "Don't you dare speak to him like that. Just because your own marriage is a mess doesn't mean you can take it out on us." The room fell silent. Clem's husband, Silas, looked up from his phone, suddenly interested in the drama unfolding. "What did you just say?" Clem's voice was dangerously low. Before I could respond, a throat cleared behind us. We turned to see Dad's lawyer, Mr. Finch, standing in the doorway. "I apologize for interrupting," he said, his eyes darting between Clem and me. "But it's time for the reading of the will." The tension in the room shifted. Clem's anger seemed to evaporate, replaced by a hungry gleam in her eyes. "Well, it's about time," she muttered. As we filed into Dad's study, I felt a wave of nausea. This was all wrong. We should be remembering Dad, sharing stories about his kindness, his humor. Instead, we were about to fight over his possessions like vultures. Mr. Finch settled behind Dad's desk, a thick envelope in his hands. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to remind you all that Reed was a complex man. His decisions may not always make sense to us, but we must respect his wishes." I saw Clem roll her eyes, and my stomach clenched. Whatever was in that envelope, I knew it was about to change everything. "Let's get on with it," Clem snapped. "Some of us have real lives to get back to." Mr. Finch nodded, breaking the seal on the envelope. As he began to read, I closed my eyes, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. "Dad, I wish you could have met your grandchild. I wish you could have guided us through this mess." But as the lawyer's words washed over me, I realized that maybe, just maybe, Dad had found a way to do exactly that. Mr. Finch's voice droned on, listing Dad's assets and their distribution. I struggled to focus, the weight of grief and exhaustion pressing down on me. But as he mentioned a piece of land with a neglected cabin, my ears perked up. The property at 1852 Willow Creek Road, including all structures and contents therein, is to be left to Amity, Mr.
Finch read.
Clem's head snapped up.
What?
That old dump? Why would she get that? I remembered the cabin vaguely. A place Dad used to go for solitude. He'd never taken us there, always saying it wasn't ready for visitors. Mr. Finch continued, the remainder of the liquid assets are to be divided equally between Clementine and Amity. Clem's eyes lit up. Now we're talking. How much are we looking at? As Mr. Finch named the figure, I felt my stomach drop. It was far less than any of us had expected. That's it. Clem exploded. There has to be more. Where's the rest of it? Mr. Finch adjusted his glasses. I'm afraid that's all a mess.
Clementine.
Your father's medical bills and some recent large withdrawals have significantly depleted the estate. Clem turned on me, her face flushed with anger. This is your fault somehow. You always were Dad's favorite. What did you do? Convince him to give you more on the side? That's enough, Mom interjected, her voice sharp. Your father worked hard for what he had, and it's not our place to question his decisions. Clem wasn't listening. She stalked over to Mr. Finch's desk, snatching up the papers. I want to see those withdrawal records. There's no way Dad spent that much. As Clem pored over the documents, muttering to herself, I felt a strange pull towards the idea of the cabin. What secrets did it hold? Why had Dad left it to me specifically? Clem, I said softly, the cabin might be worth something. We could sell it and split Dash. Oh, please, she scoffed. That worthless shack. You're welcome to it. I'll take my share in cash. Thank you very much. Silas, who had been silent until now, placed a hand on Clem's shoulder. Darling, perhaps we should discuss this at home. There might be more to consider. Clem shrugged him off. There's nothing to discuss. I'm taking what's rightfully mine. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. I caught Marlon's eye, and he gave me a supportive nod. Mr. Finch, I asked, is there anything else? Any messages or instructions Dad left behind? The lawyer hesitated, then reached into his briefcase. There is one more thing. A letter, addressed to both of you. He held out an envelope. Clem snatched it before I could reach for it. She tore it open, her eyes scanning the contents. Her face twisted into a sneer. Typical, she spat, crumpling the paper and tossing it aside. More of Dad's sentimental garbage. I retrieved the letter, smoothing it out. Dad's familiar handwriting brought a lump to my throat. My dear girls, I hope you'll forgive an old man's secrets. The true value of what I leave behind isn't in bank accounts or property deeds. It's in the lessons I hope you've learned and the love I know you're capable of sharing. Amity, the cabin holds more than meets the eye. Clem, your strength has always been your greatest asset and your greatest weakness. I pray you'll both find what you truly need. Love always.
Dad.
I looked up to see Clem gathering her things, a determined set to her jaw. I'm taking my share and going, she announced. Silas, we're leaving. As they swept out of the room, I clutched the letter to my chest. Whatever Dad had hidden away in that cabin, I knew I had to find it. Not just for myself, but for the family he'd left behind. Broken, but not beyond repair. Mom squeezed my hand. Are you all right, sweetheart? I nodded, my mind already racing with possibilities. I think I need to visit that cabin. The gravel crunched under our tires as Marlon and I pulled up to the cabin. It was more dilapidated than I remembered, its weathered boards and sagging roof a testament to years of neglect. Are you sure about this, Amity? Marlon asked, eyeing the structure warily. I nodded, determination overriding my apprehension. Dad left this to me, for a reason. I need to know why. We approached the front door, its peeling paint flaking off at my touch. The key Mr. Finch had given me turned with difficulty in the rusty lock. Inside, the air was thick with dust and memories. Sheets covered most of the furniture, creating ghostly shapes in the dim light. I moved through the rooms, running my fingers along surfaces, searching for something. I wasn't sure what. Amity, look at this. Marlon called from the study. I joined him, finding him examining a large desk. It seemed out of place, newer and better maintained than the rest of the furniture. There's something off about it, he mused, tapping the wood. It sounds hollow in places. We spent the next hour searching the desk, looking for hidden compartments or secret drawers. Just as I was about to give up, my fingers caught on a small indentation beneath the writing surface. There was a soft click, and a panel slid open. "Oh my God," I breathed, reaching inside. I pulled out a stack of letters, yellowed with age, and a folded piece of paper that looked like a map. My hands trembled as I opened the first letter. "My dearest Amity," it began in Dad's familiar scrawl. "If you're reading this, it means I've failed in my greatest endeavor, to heal the rift in our family. But perhaps, through you, there's still hope." Tears blurred my vision as I read on. Dad wrote of his regrets, of the mistakes he'd made in raising Clem and me. He spoke of a dream he'd had for us, a legacy that went beyond money or possessions. "The map will guide you to what truly matters," the letter concluded. "Trust your heart, my little peacemaker. You've always known the way." Marlon squeezed my shoulder. "What do you want to do?" I looked at the map, then back at him. "We follow it. Whatever Dad hid out there, he meant for me to find it." We spent the rest of the day combing the property, using the map as our guide. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the overgrown field behind the cabin, I spotted something glinting in the fading light. Rushing over, I began to dig with my bare hands. Marlon joined me, and soon we unearthed a metal box. With shaking fingers, I opened it. Inside was a journal and a collection of old photographs. I opened the journal, and a slip of paper fell out. It was a bank statement showing an account I'd never known about, with a balance that made my head spin. "This can't be right," I murmured, showing Marlon. As I flipped through the journal, the truth began to emerge. Dad had been secretly building this fund for years, siphoning off portions of his income and investments. But it wasn't for himself, or even for Clem and me. It was for a foundation he dreamed of starting, one dedicated to helping families in crisis. He wanted to make a difference, I realized, my voice thick with emotion. To leave the world better than he found it. Marlon wrapped an arm around me. "And he left that legacy in your hands." As the implications sank in, I felt a mix of awe and terror. This was so much bigger than a family inheritance. It was a responsibility, a chance to fulfill Dad's dreams, and maybe, just maybe, a way to bring our fractured family back together. But as I clutched the journal to my chest, a chill ran down my spine. How would Clem react when she found out about this? The sister who had stormed out, convinced she'd been cheated, now stood to lose so much more. I looked at Marlon, seeing my own determination reflected in his eyes. "We need to do this right," I said. "For Dad. For all of us." Little did I know, the real challenge was only just beginning. The morning sun filtered through the cabin's dusty windows as I pored over Dad's journal. Each page revealed a new facet of the man I thought I knew, painting a picture of someone far more complex than the father I remembered. "Amity," Marlon called from the kitchen. "You need to eat something." I waved him off, too engrossed in my father's words to think about food. The journal detailed years of secret philanthropy, anonymous donations, quiet acts of kindness, and a growing vision for a foundation that could change lives. "I never knew," I murmured, tracing Dad's handwriting with my finger. All those business trips, the late nights, he was building this dream all along. Marlon sat beside me, sliding a plate of toast across the table. "Your father was an extraordinary man. But Amity, we need to talk about what happens next." I looked up, seeing the concern in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "This fortune, the foundation. It's a huge responsibility. And then there's Clem to consider." The mention of my sister sent a chill through me. "She can't know about this." "Not yet. You saw how she reacted at the will reading." Marlon sighed. "We can't keep it from her forever. She's family, whether we like it or not." I was about to argue when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Clem's been asking questions about the cabin. Be careful, sweetheart." My heart raced. "We need to secure everything," I said, jumping up. "If Clem finds out before we're ready." We spent the next few hours cataloging every document, every heirloom we discovered. As I photographed a particularly beautiful antique locket, something caught my eye. "Marlon, look at this," I called, holding the locket up to the light. There was an inscription inside, so faint I almost missed it. "To my dearest Evelyn, my heart is yours always." Evelyn. Marlon frowned. "I thought your grandmother's name was Margaret." A memory stirred. A hushed conversation overheard years ago, my mother's tearful voice. "You can't keep hiding her, Reed. She deserves to know the truth." With trembling hands, I flipped through the journal, searching for any mention of Evelyn. Near the back, I found a loose page, covered in Dad's hurried scrawl. "My darling girls, there's so much I should have told you. Evelyn was my first love, long before I met your mother. The choices I made then have shaped our family in ways you can't imagine. I pray you'll forgive me when the truth comes to light." "Oh my God," I breathed, looking up at Marlon. "There's more to this than just money. Dad was hiding someone all these years." Before Marlon could respond, we heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. Through the window, I saw a familiar car pulling up. "It's Clem," I hissed, panic rising in my throat. "Quick, hide everything." We scrambled to conceal the documents and heirlooms as footsteps approached the cabin. The door burst open, revealing Clem, her face a mask of fury. Well, she sneered, taking in the scene. "Looks like little sister's been busy. Find anything interesting in Daddy's summer home?" I stood my ground, trying to keep my voice steady. "Clem, this isn't what you think. There's so much we need to talk about." "Save it," she snapped. "I know you're hiding something, and I'm not leaving until I get what's rightfully mine." As Clem advanced into the room, her eyes darting around for clues, I felt the weight of Dad's secrets pressing down on me. How could I protect his legacy, uncover the truth about our family's past, and somehow bridge the chasm between my sister and me? The answers were here, somewhere in this cabin. But with Clem's arrival, the clock was ticking. I had to find a way to unravel this mystery before it tore what was left of our family apart. Clem's eyes darted around the cabin, her desperation palpable. "Where is it, Amity? I know Dad left something valuable here." I stood my ground, trying to keep my voice steady. "Clem, please. We need to talk about this rationally." She laughed bitterly. "Rational? You want rational when you're clearly hiding something from me?" Her gaze fell on the partially concealed journal on the table. "What's that?" Before I could react, she snatched it up, flipping through the pages. Her eyes widened as she scanned the contents. "A foundation? Hidden accounts." Clem's voice rose with each revelation. "You lying little snake. You've been holding out on me this whole time." Marlon stepped between us. "Clem, it's not what you think. We only just discovered this ourselves." She shoved him aside, advancing on me. "How much, Amity? How much did Dad leave that you're not telling me about?" The truth hung heavy in the air. I took a deep breath, knowing this moment could shatter what was left of our relationship. "It's not about the money, Clem. Dad had plans, dreams for this fortune. He wanted to help people, to make a difference." "Oh, spare me the saintly act," Clem spat. "You always were Daddy's perfect little girl, weren't you? Well, guess what? I have dreams too. Dreams that require money that should be half mine." Her words stung, but I held firm. "I'm sorry you're struggling, Clem, but this isn't the answer. Dad wanted this money to go towards something bigger than us." "Bigger than us?" Clem's laugh was hollow. "What about family, Amity? What about taking care of your own sister?" The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. "Family? You haven't acted like family in years, Clem. Where were you when Dad was sick? When Mom needed support?" Her face flushed with anger. "Don't you dare judge me. You have no idea what I've been through, what I'm dealing with now." Something in her tone made me pause. "What do you mean? Clem, are you in some kind of trouble?" For a moment, vulnerability flashed across her face before the mask of anger slipped back into place. "That's none of your business. What matters is that I need that money, and you're going to give me my fair share." Marlon interjected. "Clem, we can't just hand over the money. There are legal implications, not to mention the ethical dash. Ethical? Clem scoffed. Since when did you care about ethics, Marlon? Or should I tell Amity about your little secret from college? I saw Marlon stiffen, his face paling. What are you talking about? Clem's smile was vicious. Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The reason you transferred schools, the real reason you and your family don't speak anymore. The room fell silent, tension crackling in the air. I looked between my husband and my sister, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Marlon, I whispered, searching his face for answers. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Amity, it's complicated. I never meant to dash. Clem cut him off. Save the excuses. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me half of whatever Dad left, or I start airing all our family's dirty laundry. Starting with golden boy Marlon here. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt torn between protecting my father's legacy and preserving what was left of my family. You have 24 hours to decide, Clem said, heading for the door. Choose wisely, little sister. As the door slammed behind her, I sank into a chair, my head spinning. The cabin that had once felt like a sanctuary now seemed claustrophobic, filled with secrets and lies. Marlon reached for me, but I pulled away. Don't, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Just,
Don't.
we need to talk, but right now I need to figure out how to save Dad's dream without destroying what's left of our family. As the weight of Clem's ultimatum settled over us, I realized that uncovering the truth about my father's past was only the beginning. The real test lay in navigating the treacherous waters of the present, and somehow finding a way to honor both my father's wishes and the bonds of family. No matter how strained they might be, the tension in the cabin was suffocating. Marlon paced nervously while I sat at the table, my father's journal open before me. Clem's ultimatum echoed in my mind, a ticking time bomb threatening to tear apart what remained of our family. Amity, Marlon began, his voice strained. We need to talk about what Clem said. I looked up at him, searching his face for any trace of the man I thought I knew. Yes, we do. What secret was she talking about, Marlon? What happened in college? He sank into a chair, running his hands through his hair. It was a long time ago. I made a mistake. A big one. As Marlon began to speak, the story unfolded like a nightmare. A drunken night, a car accident, a passenger left behind. His voice trembled as he recounted fleeing the scene, transferring schools to escape the guilt and potential consequences. I've carried this for so long, he finished, his eyes pleading. I never meant to keep it from you, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing you, of ruining everything we've built. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. How could you? I whispered. All these years, and you never told me? Before Marlon could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Clem. Time's running out, sis. What's it going to be? Anger surged through me, at Marlon for his deception, at Clem for her manipulation, at myself for being caught in the middle of it all. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Amity, wait. Marlon called after me. Where are you going? To end this, I snapped. Once and for all. I drove to Clem's house, my mind racing. When she opened the door, her smug expression only fueled my determination. Well, she drawled. Come to your senses, have you? I pushed past her into the house. We need to talk, Clem. No more games, no more threats. She followed me into the living room, where Silas sat looking confused and concerned. Amity, what's going on? I turned to face them both. It's time for the truth to come out. All of it. Over the next hour, I laid bare everything. Dad's secret philanthropy, the foundation he dreamed of, and yes, even Marlon's past. Silas listened in stunned silence, while Clem's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally, a flicker of something that might have been shame. So that's it. I finished, my voice hoarse. That's the legacy Dad left us. Not just money, but a chance to do something meaningful. To be better than we've been. Clem scoffed, but it lacked her usual venom. And what? You expect me to just give up my share? To play along with Dad's little charity project? No, I said softly. I expect you to be honest. With Silas, with yourself, about why you really need the money so desperately. The room fell silent. Silas turned to Clem, his brow furrowed. Clem? What is she talking about? For a moment, I saw my sister's mask slip. The vulnerability I'd glimpsed earlier returned, and with it, a flood of tears. I messed up, okay? She choked out. I got in over my head with some investments. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out, but as Clem's financial troubles came to light, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. This was the sister I remembered, flawed, yes, but human. Not the cold, calculating woman she'd become. Silas moved to comfort her, but Clem pulled away.
Don't, she said.
I don't deserve it. I've ruined everything. I took a deep breath, knowing that my next words could change the course of our family forever.
No, Clem.
You haven't. Not yet. But what you do next, that's what matters. As the three of us sat there, the weight of secrets finally lifted, I realized that this was the real test. Not just of our family bonds, but of the legacy our father had left us. Could we find a way forward to heal the wounds of the past and build something meaningful for the future? The answer, I knew, would determine not just the fate of Dad's fortune, but the very soul of our family. The tension in Clem and Silas's living room was palpable. Clem sat hunched on the couch, her face buried in her hands, while Silas paced back and forth, his expression a mix of shock and anger. How could you do this, Clem? Silas demanded. All those investments, the lies. Do you have any idea what this means for us? Clem looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I was trying to fix it, Silas. I thought if I could just make one big score, everything would be okay. I watched the scene unfold, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. This was the reckoning I'd known was coming, but it brought me no joy to see my sister's life crumbling before my eyes. Fix it, Silas scoffed. You've ruined us, Clem. The company, our reputation, it's all gone. As Silas continued to berate Clem, I saw something shift in my sister's demeanor. The vulnerability that had briefly surfaced began to harden, her eyes taking on a familiar, calculating gleam. It's not all gone, Clem said, her voice low.
She turned to me.
Tell him, Amity. Tell him about Dad's fortune. I felt my heart race. Clem, don't dash. But she was already forging ahead, desperation fueling her words. Dad left a hidden fortune, Silas. Millions, earmarked for some ridiculous charity project. But it's family money. It belongs to us. Silas stopped pacing, his gaze darting between Clem and me. Is this true? I took a deep breath, knowing that my next words would shape the course of our family's future. Yes, it's true. But it's not what you think, Silas. Dad had a vision, a plan to help people. It's not just money to be spent. Clem let out a bitter laugh. Oh, spare me the noble act, Amity. You're just as selfish as the rest of us. You want to keep it all for yourself. Play the big philanthropist while your own sister suffers. That's not true, and you know it. I shot back, feeling my own anger rise. I've offered to help you, Clem, to find a way to make this right. But you can't just take Dad's legacy and use it to cover up your mistakes. Silas held up a hand, his face grim. Enough. Clem, I need to know exactly how bad this is. Show me everything. As Clem reluctantly pulled out financial documents and began explaining the extent of her mismanagement, I felt my phone buzz. A text from Marlon. Where are you? We need to talk. I stepped out of the room, my mind reeling. How had we come to this? Our family, once so close, now fractured by secrets and lies. When I returned, the atmosphere had shifted again. Silas stood by the window, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Clem sat at the dining table, surrounded by papers, her expression unreadable. I've seen enough, Silas said, his voice heavy. Clem, I'm sorry, but I can't be a part of this anymore. I'm calling my lawyer in the morning. We're done. Clem's head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. Silas, please. We can fix this. With the money from Dad's estate dash.
No, y interrupta firmly.
That's not an option, Clem. The foundation is happening whether you like it or not. It's what Dad wanted. For a moment, I thought Clem might lash out again. But instead, she seemed to deflate, the fight draining out of her. Then what am I supposed to do? She whispered. I've lost everything. I moved to sit beside her, feeling a glimmer of the sisterly bond we'd once shared. Not everything, Clem. You still have family. If you're willing to make things right, to be honest for once, we can find a way through this. Together. Silas cleared his throat. Amity's right. This fortune of your father's, maybe there's a way it can help, but not by just handing it over. We need to think bigger. As the three of us sat there, the beginnings of a plan taking shape, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation. This was our chance to honor Dad's legacy, to heal the wounds of the past. But it would require sacrifice, honesty, and a level of trust we hadn't shared in years. I took out my phone, my finger hovering over Marlon's name. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same again. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees surrounding the cabin as I stood on the porch, one hand resting on my swollen belly. 6 months had passed since that fateful day when our family secrets had come crashing down around us. Marlon appeared beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Penny for your thoughts? I leaned into him, grateful for his steady presence. Just thinking about how much has changed. How much we've all changed. The sound of laughter drifted from inside the cabin, and I couldn't help but smile. Mom was in the kitchen with Clem, the two of them preparing dinner together, a scene I wouldn't have thought possible just a few months ago. Are you ready for this? Marlon asked, his voice gentle. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. We made our way inside, where Silas was setting the table. The cabin, once neglected and filled with secrets, now buzzed with life and purpose. Dad's dream of a charitable foundation had become a reality, with all of us playing a part. Clem looked up as we entered, her face softer than I'd seen it in years. Just in time, she said. Dinner's almost ready. As we gathered around the table, I couldn't help but marvel at the transformation we'd all undergone. Clem, humbled by her downfall, had thrown herself into honest work at the foundation. Silas, though no longer married to Clem, had become an invaluable advisor. And Marlon, having faced his past and made amends, was more open and connected than ever before. Mom raised her glass. I'd like to propose a toast, she said, her eyes shining. To Reed, whose legacy brought us together in ways we never could have imagined. We clinked glasses, the weight of the past few months hanging in the air between us. I have something I want to say, Clem spoke up, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. She looked at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Amity, I owe you an apology. For everything. I was so caught up in my own problems, my own greed, that I lost sight of what really matters. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. We've all made mistakes, Clem. What matters is that we're here now, trying to make things right. Silas cleared his throat. I have some news, he said. The Foundation's first major project is ready to launch. We'll be breaking ground on the community center next month. A chorus of excitement erupted around the table. This was what Dad had dreamed of, his fortune being used to make a real difference in people's lives. As the conversation flowed, I felt a sudden kick from the baby. I gasped, drawing everyone's attention. Are you okay? Marlon asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded, smiling through happy tears. More than okay. I think Dad would be proud of us. Mom reached over, squeezing my hand. He always was, sweetheart. And he'd be over the moon about becoming a grandfather. As the evening wore on, I found myself back on the porch, watching the sun set over the trees. Marlon joined me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. What are you thinking about now? He asked. I turned to face him, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. I'm thinking about the future, about the family we're building, the legacy we're creating. Marlon placed a hand on my belly, his touch gentle. Our little one is going to have quite the story to grow up with. I laughed softly. They certainly are. But more importantly, they're going to have a family that knows the value of honesty, forgiveness, and working together for something bigger than ourselves. As we stood there, the warm glow of the cabin behind us and the promise of tomorrow stretching out before us, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For Dad's final gift to us, not just the money, but the opportunity to heal, to grow, and to become the family he always knew we could be. The journey had been difficult, filled with pain and betrayal, but as I looked at the life growing inside me, I knew that every step had been worth it. We had faced our demons, confronted our past, and emerged stronger for it. As the first stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, I whispered a quiet thank you to Dad. His unfinished promise had become our new beginning, a legacy of love and hope that would carry us forward into whatever challenges the future might hold.